Hello friends, welcome to the next session on knowledge representation. Today we'll talk about conceptual dependency. We already seen predicate logic, propositional logic, semantic net, frames, and today we are talking about conceptual dependency. Here we are talking about representing a knowledge of the events. So we'll be representing events along with the information of those events. So let us start. The theory of conceptual dependency is of how to represent the kind of knowledge about events that it usually contain in natural language sentences. So here, the events which are given in natural language sentences, we are going to represent them using conceptual dependency. It is developed by Shank in 1973 to 75 to represent the meaning of natural language sentences. It helps in drawing the inferences from the sentences. These are the two best parts, and it is independent of the language. These are the strengths of this conceptual dependency. It focuses on the concepts instead of the syntax. That is what it means. It helps in drawing inferences from the sentences. It tries to get the logic or the knowledge from the sentences instead of the syntax. It focuses on the concepts, then it focuses on understanding instead of the structure. That is why it is language independent, right? CD representation of a sentence is not built using words in the sentence, rather built using conceptual primitives which gives the intended meaning of the words. Right? So here we are not converting a words in the sentence into the conceptual dependency, but we have set up conceptual primitives which helps us in converting the sentence into the CD form, which will have the intended meanings of the word. It will not have directly translation of the words, but it will have the intended meaning of the word in the representation. Now, introduce the idea of canonical meaning representation. So what it is, different words and structures represent the same concept, right? You can write a sentence in more than one way. Then those two sentences, though they are written in different way but have the same meaning, then they can be represented using a single conceptual dependency primitive, right? It provides structures and specific set of primitives from which representation can be built. So you'll have set of primitives, structures, rules, tenses and all, which will help in building the representations in CD form. So the representation of events is separate from the words used to encode them. The task of the understander is to represent the events underlying sentences rather than the sentences themselves. Again, I read it, concentrate here. The task of the understander is to represent the events underlying the sentences rather than the sentence themselves. So what we are representing? We are representing the events which are part of the sentence, not the sentence. So events representations are governed by a set of rules that involve fitting inputs to a predefined representation scheme. So already there are predefined rules and you can fit the sentence into those rules. The rule for filling the slots of the representation are the basis of language understanding. So these rules are really important, which helps in converting your natural language sentence into CD form. Okay. So overall conceptual dependency is based upon events and actions, right? Every event, if applicable, every event what it has an actor, an action performed by the actor, an object that the action performs on, and a direction in which the action is oriented, right? Remember here we have put the word if applicable. Some of them may be applicable, some of them may not be applicable for each and every event. Now let us look at an example. Vivin surprise Nakita is a simple word, right? English sentence. Now what we want, if you want to capture the actor, action, object and direction in this sentence, it gives only part of it, right? It tells us Vivin is the actor, right? And Nakita is the recipient. Now what is the action? There is no action specified. In CD, we represent Vivin did some unknown action that resulted in a state change within Nakita to surprise. This is a statement given. How do we write it in CD form? Remember this. In CD, we'll represent Vivin did some action. Who is Vivin? Vivin is an actor, right? He did some unknown action. There is no name given to the action that resulted in a state change within Nakita to surprised. Is it clear? The simple example of representation of a sentence into a CD form. Of course, we'll go in detail as we go ahead. Now, these are the 5 important components which help you to represent knowledge in CD form, right? So the 5 components are conceptual categories, primitive actions, conceptual cases, conceptual tenses, and conceptual dependency. All these together will help in representing the knowledge, right? Let us look at them one by one. Now, conceptual categories. Now, when you look at PP and PA, these are the entities and the objects that are involved in the events. PP is nothing but the picture producer, which are the actors, that is real world objects that perform different acts. And P are the attributes of these objects or the PP, right? The properties of the producer. Simple example, if you look at Vivin ran. Now, who is Vivin? Vivin is an actor who carried out an action of running, right? So, Vivin is picture producer. Then Nischay is tall. Now, again, Nischay is an actor and tall is the attribute which defines the actor, right? So, Nischay is PP, that is picture producer, and tall is the picture attribute. That is the properties of a picture producer. Is it fine? Similarly, Nakita took the book from Vivin. Now here there is no attribute, there is no property as such. All are picture producer, right? Nakita, book, Vivin. Now, next what we have, a nice boy. Now, what is here? Boy is a picture producer and what is the attribute of this boy? He is a nice boy, right? So nice is PA, that is picture attribute or properties of this producer. Next, then you have 2 more, that is act is the primitive actions. We have set of primitive actions. Then you have action aider, that is attribute of primitive actions. So actions with the attributes, picture producer with the attribute. Fine. Okay, now let us look at the set of primitive actions which will be helping us in representing the CDs, the sentence in the CD form. There are 11 primitive actions. Primitive actions for physical actions, we have 5 of them which are for physical actions. The first one is ingest, that is ingestion of an object by an animal, that is drinking, eating and all. Expel, expulsion of an object from inside the body by an animal to the world, that is cry. Why cry? Because tears are rolling out. When you cry, something is expelled out from the body. Propel, application of physical force of an object, that is throwing, pushing. Move, movement of a body part by its owner, right? Kicking is an example. Grasp, grasping of an object by an actor, that is holding. Now, so again, you have state change primitive actions, that is physical and abstract transfers. A trans represents transfer of abstract relationship like giving. P trans, transfer of physical location of an object. Object's location is change, that is go. Example is go. Mental acts, that is M trans, transfer of mental information. Right? Example telling. M built, construction of a new information from an old information. Example is decide. Then instruments for other acts is speak, that is action of producing sound. Example say. Attend, focusing a sense organ towards a stimulus. That is example is listen. Now these are the set of primitive actions which we'll be using to represent the events along with the rules what we'll be talking ahead. Now the examples here for the acts. Now Shyam gave book to Ram, right? What it is? It is an example of the primitive act A trans. What does that A trans means? Transfer of abstract relationship, that is nothing but give. Fine. Vivin pushed the chair. That is propel. What is propel? Right? Application of physical force of an object. So what is the physical force applied here? Is pushing. Right? Pushing the chair. Monica cried. That is expel. So what it is? Monica expels tears. Eyes are possessed by Monica. Then Nakita went to Sweden. It is P-trans by change of physical location from one location to another location. So from here she went to Sweden. Now Viha read a comic, that is M-trans. So M-trans is related to mental act, that is nothing but transfer of mental information. Is it fine? These are the simple examples to see how these primitive acts can be used. Okay. Along with the primitive acts, we also have conceptual roles, right? Actor, the performer of an act, then act, an action done to an object. Object is nothing but a thing that is acted upon. Recipient is the receiver of an object as a result of an act. Direction, the location that an act is directed towards. The state that an object is in. As we go ahead, all these things will be more clear when we look at the examples. Then you have conceptual cases, so, right? These are the four conceptual cases. So arrows indicates the direction of the dependency, right? And letters above this O, R, I, D, right? They indicate certain relationship. So we have four types here. First one is object case relationship, right? Vivin push the table, right? Who is Vivin? Vivin is a picture producer. What is the act carried out? Act carried out is pushing. And on what the act carried out? Act was carried out on the object table, right? So picture producer carried out the act of pushing on the object. Is it fine? Next, second one is recipient case relation. Here, Nakita took the book from Vivin, right? Now, Nakita is picture producer, that is PP. Vivin is also picture producer. What is the act carried out? Act carried out is taking. It took the book, right? So who took the book? Nakita. So who is the recipient? Nakita is the recipient. So here these are the two picture producer, right? He is the source. He is the source and he is the receiver, right? The recipient case relation. And act is what? What was the act carried out? Is took the book. Next, what you have is instrumental case. Nishchay ate gulab jamun with spoon, right? This is instrumental case. Act is carried out using an instrument. Now, what is the act carried out? Act carried out is eating, that is ate. And what was the instrument used? Was spoon, right? So this is instrumental case. Next, what you have is directive case. Sunil went to Kolhapur from Pune. So there is a change in the location from the source to destination by moving in a particular direction, right? So act is what? Moving, that is went, using in a particular direction to move from one location to another location, right? So Sunil went to Kolhapur from Pune. Now, along with this, you only have conceptual tenses. If you remember in previous lectures, we have taught like in case of predicate logic and all, you cannot predict the tense, whether I'm going or I went. Both will be represented using the same syntax. But in case of conceptual dependency, we can have tenses also associated with the translation. This is the representation, right? So P represents past, F future, T transition, so on and so forth. You can read it out. Okay, now the last point what we have is the conceptual dependency. So semantic rules for the information for the formation of dependency structures such as relationship between the actor and an event or between a primitive action and an instrument. So we'll look at the conceptual syntax rules. In some books there are 12 rules, in some books they are given 14 rules. We'll stick up to the 12 rules. And for more information you can refer the books. So what are this rule 1? What it says? It describes the relationship between an actor and the event he or she causes, right? So who is the actor? PP is right, picture producer, and an act is carried out. This is a two-way dependency since neither actor nor event can be considered primary, right? So the letter P here in the dependency link indicates it is a past tense. So what is the sentence given? Sentence given is Vivin ran, and how we are representing is using Vivin and the double dependency arrow and P trans. What P trans here? The transfer of physical location of an object, right? Vivin, when he's running, his location is physical location is changed from source from where he started and where he is right now. Is it fine? So this sentence can be represented using a CD representation. Next we have rule 2, which describes the relationship between act and PP, that is object of an act, right? So picture producer and an act. The direction of the arrow is towards the act since the context of the specific act determines the meaning of the object relation, right? So we will push the table. What was the act carried out? Pushing it, right? And on what the act was carried out? It was carried out on an object table and was carried out by a picture producer Vivin, right? So you use propel as a primitive act to represent this, and O is nothing but table is an object, right? Why propel? Why? Because we are using a physical force is applied on an object. Now, rule 3 describes the relationship between two picture producers, one of which belongs to the set defined by the other. Now here, Vivin and engineer is again a set of picture producer, right? Vivin is engineer, so Vivin belongs to a set called engineers, right? So how would you represent it? Like this, using this arrow. Next, the rule 4 describes the relationship between two picture producers, one of which provides a particular kind of information about the other, right? It's the relationship between two picture producers. Now, what it kind of information it provides? There may be usually three types of information. What is possession, shown as pause by, location as lock, and physical containment shown as content. The direction of the arrow is again towards the concept being described. Vivin's cat. That means what? Vivin possesses the cat, or cat is possessed by Vivin. Okay, and rule 5 describes the relationship between picture producer and the picture attribute that is asserted to describe it, right? So attribute which describes is the picture producer. So PA represents the states of picture producers such as height, health, etc. That is the attribute, right? Now, example, Vivin is thin. How do we represent it? Vivin's weight is less than 50. That means Vivin is thin. Again, you can check it clearly. We are not translating the words. We are taking the meaning of the words and we are representing it in a form of a knowledge. Rule 6 describes the relationship between picture producer and an attribute that already has been predicted of it. Now, direction is again towards PP being described. Intelligent Vivin, right? Intelligent Vivin. What is intelligent? Intelligent is the attribute of this picture producer Vivin, right? So, intelligent Vivin. This is a picture producer and this is the attribute of this picture producer. Rule 7 describes the relationship between an act and the source and the recipient of the act, right? Okay, now simple example, Vivin took pen from Nakita. Now who are the picture producers here? Vivin and Nakita are the picture producers. What was the act carried out? Was taking. And on what the act was carried out? Act was carried out on an object, pen, right? So source is Nakita, recipient is Vivin, right? Source is Nakita, recipient, so recipient relation, right? And why utterance transfer to giving, like transfer of abstract relationship. So who is the recipient is Vivin, and the action was carried out on an object pen, right? So this sentence is represented in CD form. Rule 8 describes a relationship that describes the change in state, right? Again, this is an attribute. This is an attribute of a picture producer. Simple example, trees grows. Tree grows. So your picture producer is tree. Its attribute is its size, which was C, and after some time, the size is increased. It is greater than C. Rule 9 describes the relationship between one conceptualization and other that causes it. So here X causes Y, that is if X then Y. So what it is, example is within short girish. How it will be represented? Within short girish, that is why girish health is poor. Right? This is the inference what we are storing. Because within short girish health is poor. Next, rule 10, it describes the relationship between one conceptualization with another that is happening at the same time of the first. Right? Here Y is happening while X is in progress. Example, while going home, I saw a snake. Right? I'm going home. It is in progress. While going home, what they saw? I saw a snake. Fine. Then you have rule 11. It describes the relationship between an act and the instrument with which it is performed. The instrument must contain an act. Simple example, Vivin ate gulab jamun with spoon. Right? Okay, we know ingest for eating and all. So Vivin is a picture producer, right? What was the act carried out? 8 is represented using ingest. And on what the act was carried out? On gulab jamun, which is an object, right? Now, how the act was carried out? Using the instrument spoon, which is an object, right? So, instrumental relation here, instrumental case, right? So, using spoon, Vivin ate gulab jamun. And why P here? Because it is past tense. It is 8. Okay. This is for past tense. This is for instrumental case. This is for object. This is for object. Next you have rule 12, which describes the relationship between a conceptualization and the time at which the event it described occurred. Simple example, Vivin ran yesterday, right? So this is past tense. Even you can put it here as yesterday. Vivin P trans. Why P trans? Change of physical location. He ran. That is why the physical location is changed. I hope these 12 rules are clear. And for more details, like there are two more rules, you can refer to this Artificial Intelligence third edition book by Ellen Rich and Kelvin Knight. Now, inferences are associated with primitive acts. We have seen all those 11 primitive acts, and now there are some inferences which are associated with them. So, general inferences are stored with each primitive act, thus reducing the number of inferences that need to be stored explicitly with each concept. For example, from a sentence Ram killed Ravan, we can infer then Ravan is dead, right? This can be stored. Example related to primitive act ingest. You already seen Gulab Jamun example of ingest. Now, the following sentence can be associated with this primitive act. These sentences can be associated with this. The object ingested is no longer available in its original form because it's already eaten. The object is eatable, then the actor has less hunger. If object is toxic, then actor's health is bad. The physical position of the object has changed, so P trans is inferred. Is it fine? These are the things which can be inferred from a single primitive act, ingest. Another example, the verbs like give, take, steal, donate involve a transfer of ownership of an object. If any of them occurs, that is, then inferences about who now has the object and who once had the object may be important. Like now suppose Nakita gave pen to Vivin. So before giving pen, Nakita was the owner, right? But after giving pen, Vivin is the owner who received the pen, right? So who gave and who has now the information is stored. In CD representation, these possible inferences can be stated once and associated with the primitive act it trans, right? We don't store all these things. We just associate it with the primitive act it trans. Where is the abstract relationship? Transfer of abstract relation. Another example, Sunil threatened Anil with a broken nose. So sentence interpretation is that Sunil informed Anil that he will do something to break Anil's nose. Now, what we do here, Sunil did, that is said. So, in order that Anil will believe that Anil does some other thing different from what Sunil wanted, then Sunil will break Anil's nose. Now, what are the problems with CD representation? It is difficult to construct original sentence from its corresponding CD representation. Why? Because we are not translating a sentence directly. We are translating it using primitive acts. You can see here now with this act, these are the sentences associated, inferences which are associated. So you cannot transfer a sentence from its corresponding CD represent. C is missing here. Just put it when you are reading it. See its corresponding CD representation. Now CD representation can be used as a general model for knowledge representation because its theory is based on representation of events as well as the information related to events. Even we are talking about the time when it is occurred and the recipient and the object and all the data is stored there. Rules are to be carefully designed for each primitive action in order to obtain semantically correct interpretation. Now we already have seen 12 rules. So when the rules are designed, you need to design them very carefully because almost all the sentence you should be able to fit into it semantically. Now what are the advantages of conceptual dependency? Ambitious attempt to represent information in a language independent way. This is one of the best part. It is not dependent on the language because we are not translating. We are representing its concept. Decompose words into primitives so that language processing focuses on general concepts instead of individual words. Canonical representation captures commonality across different words and structures. Like now, these two statements can be represented using a single CD form. So, Nishchay went to Mumbai by car and Nishchay took a car to Mumbai will be represented using a single structure. Prospects for machine learning translations are improved because of CD. Facilitates inference. We already seen the inferences. We can infer properties of unknown words. Inferences are attached to general concepts, so inference rules are not overwhelming. Now, what are the limitations? It's incompleteness. It is incompleteness. Why? Because no quantification can be associated here. No hierarchy for objects and actions. Everything is primitive. You don't have easy relationship here. The primitives are the really atomic. Example, move to a doctor involves many smaller actions. Primitives can be composed of other primitives which is not shown there. P-trans may consist of many smaller P-trans. Now these are the wrong set of primitives which needs to be reformed or more needs to be added. No higher level concepts. Many inferences not organized around primitives. Now Mihir bought a book at the store. How do you represent this? What is the primitive for this? Mihir bought books. Mihir likes, because Mihir bought books, Mihir likes reading. Mihir got a gun to threaten or shoot someone. These are the limitations what CD has. I hope the concept is clear. The primitive acts, the primitive roles, and the tenses. I want you all to go through it again so the concept will be still more clear. Of course, nowadays we are not using it, but these are the basis for machine translation. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe.